We got to see what happens when TSM is bad and win. Earlier in the week on Friday, we got to see what happened when TSM is not as dominant and they get punished as Dignitas. They go 2-1 this week they get a surprising win against TSM. I'd say that's surprising. Defeat Golden Guardians and then drop one to Immortals, who is their main competition in the playoff race there. But in that game, Acadian with the big Baron steal. Spica goes 0-3. Power of Evil on the LeBlanc. Couldn't find anyone to really blow up there. What did you make of this matchup here? Or is this just another NA dig Baron, y'all?
I mean, I thought the matchup. I thought everything was pretty weird. I mean, this was one of the more the dishonest team compositions that we also could have seen out of TSM. I first person viewed the entire thing from Spica's perspective. I just did a pure EDU jungle POV, and what it's like watching is it's like watching someone being put in a glass casket without any air holes and then being lowered into the ground and then alive. I mean that was basically what it was like. So you're not only picking jungle Lee Sin on the modern patch, so he's going to have inherently less damage because he also gets no points in E. His clears are slower. He's a champion that requires base levels. He's a champion that requires items, which is the whole fucking point for putting him in top. The only time you pivot him into jungle is when you get a massive lead inside of an individual lane. That's the only time you pivot him. TSM obviously can't think this far. So anyways, they just have a random miscellaneous uber sinful comp. If they don't get massively ahead in like 10 minutes of the game, everything's just doomed. Now you could argue that they have, they have a winning top lane, right? But then you have to define winning. They have a winning mid lane, but again, define winning. Because winning in this context is not just winning in a CS lead or a little bit of EXP. That shouldn't be what your goal is, because you're always just going to get completely face rolled in team fights. Because the enemy team has more base value on their champions. They make use of gold better. So I thought it was just pretty doomed. I think that maybe 7 or 8 minutes into the preview, I just thought the game was over. Watching it from Spica's perspective, I think is very eye-opening because it shows how there's basically actually very little he could have done without coin flipping super big and then requiring Dignitas to blunder massively in order to get anything going. But then the post-game threads are flaming him.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think
I'm going to pass it back over to Dom.
Yeah, I think that when you watch this game, because I was watching the first-person perspective, and it's really obvious to me that they're not, like... Spica and the rest of his team are, for some reason, not in sync with, like, when he's actually going to arrive to their lane. Like, so, for example, this game, he started bot side, right? And he's doing a 4-camp clear to get to top side. Like, he is doing 4 camps. He's doing blue, Gromp, Wolves, red, and then he's going top, which means that he's going to be top around like 2:30 to 2:45, something like that, right? Or probably like 2:45 to like 3 minutes, something like that, right? So he's going to be there at that timing. So if that's the communication, then Huni can't play aggressively into like when the enemy is a Xin Zhao jungle, knowing that the Xin can be there at 1 camp early. The Xin can be there 15 seconds before Spica. So during that 15-second window, he has to play safe. He can't be trading in a way where the Xin is able to kill him. But he didn't have a ward. Like, the Xin just walks behind him, gets a free kill, and then, like, his whole lane is doomed. And not only does that screw him over, it screws over Spica, because now Spica can't even contest that top crab because he doesn't have prio top lane anymore. And then, like, the whole situation just ends up weird. I think another thing is, when you look at like these comps, so number one, I think that the way that you try to abuse this type of draft, or like when you're playing this type of draft, is I don't even think you play towards topside at all. Like, I'm not sure if it's Huni saying, hey, I need you here on this wave, or like, oh, they're gonna dive me on this wave, which is reasonable. Maybe your first clear has to go top if you think that there's no way for you to control the wave. In my opinion, in the Gnar Renekton matchup, you should have enough ability to trade early as the Gnar to prevent the Renekton from stacking a wave into diving you, because you have range advantage, like level 1, etc. And Renekton's not really a champion until level 3. So you should be able, if you're a top tier Gnar, to at least minimize the chance of them diving, or make it a situation where even if you get dove and you die, it's not the end of the game. Like, you're completely fine. Like, you trim the wave, you trade with the enemy top laner, so they're low going for it. You can potentially get a 1-for-1. I've seen people play these types of lanes without jungle help, and that was to like junglers that were better at like burst diving than a Xin Zhao. When you look at this draft, it's like Spica wants to be able to gank mid with LeBlanc, Lee Sin. I mean, if you're playing LeBlanc into a lane and you're never ganking the lane, the pick is just not as good. You might as well pick something else. And then like the ability for them to snowball with the Kalista Nautilus, doesn't really seem there. Like you even saw it in the C9 game. It was the same type of thing. They had a Callista lane, and they weren't like the Callista lane just won by default because of what happened level 1, but it didn't feel like they were actually able to snowball the game with Callista. And it just feels like when you look at TSM's like drafts, if they have like a troll mage mid, relatively stable top laner, and then they have like a bot lane that scales easily as well, then they win versus most NA teams. When they play drafts like this, I don't have much confidence. And I think if they play against better teams, like let's say C9 improves, 100 Thieves, like these types of matches, if they play these types of drafts, I think they'll be just significantly worse, and they won't really win with them.
Mm-hmm.
I appreciate you all breaking down the draft itself, and then how, even though it is a suboptimal draft with the Lee Sin moving on in down to the jungle side, how it should have played out, and the repercussions of Huni falling behind. So that again, a lot of people don't see it, but they just want to flame Spica for not helping out his laners when his laners aren't helping him out early on, and he's playing catch up for the rest of the game. All right. Those are the matches that we broke down. If we take a look at the current records and the winning streaks that they're on. 100 Thieves on an 8-game winning streak. TSM, after dropping that first game to Dignitas, they improved to 11-4 on a 2-game streak. And Evil Geniuses, 5 games in a row here. Evil Geniuses taking victories here. I kind of wanted to take a look at the specific playoff matchups, right? The 1-2 are the ones that get the bye. 3-4 are the ones that get side selection in their, I guess, also the winner side bracket that don't get the movements down. And then scrolling down on the bottom with the CLG, FlyQuest, Golden Guardian. So we just have like fights at different parts of the bracket here. When you take a look at it, who do you feel like is on the ascendancy here? Do you feel like it's clear-cut 100 Thieves is our best team, with TSM just on a good day could take them? And how bad do you think the skid is for Cloud9 right now, sitting at 8-7, the same record as Team Liquid?
I mean, I think that C9 will improve over the course of the split. Now, I mean, they like if you heard the Perks interview, right? Like they didn't scrim with Sven at all before the season. They just were scrimming with King, and then they just recently started scrimming with Sven. Up until these games, they had 6 scrim days, because you got to remember, LCS teams scrim 3 days a week, right? So there's 3 days a week, 3 days of games, then 1 off day. So if they've been playing with Sven for 2 weeks, that means they've literally got 6 scrim days with Sven the entire split. I feel like overall, like 100 Thieves look like the best team, but would I say that they're like guaranteed to win? No, I feel like if any team actually gets better from here, any of these teams could win. Honestly, the team that I think has been impressing me the most recently has been EG. I feel like EG actually has gotten better, and they've started like learning how to do things that they weren't doing before. Specifically, their turret dives early game, I think, are the best in the league. They're one of the only teams that syncs their junglers clear with mid lane prio to go dive a side lane, which is a very, very valuable play to be able to execute if given the opportunity. And teams don't punish that in NA. So like the response would be, if you end up doing this, like you do a 3-man dive on top, well, then like the enemy mid and jungle, even if they don't have tempo, have the ability to do the same thing to bot lane, right? So you stack a wave and then you do the same thing bot, and then potentially you answer more kills because there's 2 players bot than you do in the top dive. Like, but I don't see other teams doing that. It feels like another team, like if a team 3-man dives at 315, it's like, wow, nice play, guys. Like, well played. And then the other team just does nothing. They're like, okay, well, I'm pushing the wave and resetting, and the top laner just TP's back and whatever. But I actually feel like this team has made improvements. I mean, Jizuke is still like a monster in so many times throughout the game. Like that Lee Sin game, he died like maybe like 5 times more than he has to. And what's so weird is he played the hardest part of the game the best. Like his team griefed him. LeBlanc got free kills because he was behind from the top dive. Like because of like the bot dive there, because of the fact that he ended up going for that bot dive, he was like half a level down. He's also in a matchup that's not inherently good for Lee Sin into LeBlanc. And his team just gave LeBlanc a bunch of free kills. But then he was able to actually hide in a brush, get a nice kill onto LeBlanc, get the shutdown gold, and he was completely fine after that. It was started a winning fight for his team, and then he ran it down like 5 or 6 times in a row after that. So it's like, I don't actually think this team is good based on how they played the mid to late game, but at least they've gotten better at early game, which is a lot more like, I don't see TSM executing those dives. Like, I don't see them doing it. I mean, when they try to do it, it looks like a horror show because they don't calculate all the things that need to be calculated when you go into it. So, for example, I mean, the thing that we see in TSM Legends is when they lost to FlyQuest earlier this season. where they just before FlyQuest lost like 10 games in a row, right? Where they go for the dive, but they're not even thinking about if mid can TP or not, and then then they just die 2 for 1, and the whole dive is botched, and the game is over. Like, I don't know. I just don't think other teams have this in their arsenal right now.
Well, that's the end of our video. You want more though, right? Thought so. Good thing YouTube makes it so easy to watch more VENN Esports. Easier than keeping me in frame. Whoa. Whoa. While you're watching me dodge around, click on these videos.